I want to start off by saying this is something that I do not generally recommend people do. However, it can provide a decent example of how you can fill different party roles in a creative way. Basically, this is a gag party build, but it would probably work fairly well in a campaign. What did I do here? Well, as you can see here in the Path Builder, I created a party of entirely fighters that fills all of the party roles. They're at level 1, but you could keep that going up to higher levels. Now, yes, I don't recommend you create a party of entirely one class, but this does show why you don't necessarily need just one character of any one class and want to avoid doubling up, unlike in some other systems, because of the sheer diversity available in certain class options. Note, the same thing wouldn't necessarily hold true if, I went in here and clicked Magus. However, in this case, it actually did. So to explain, right here, this first one is the tank. Second one here is some recall knowledge plus the stealthy person. This one is the healer / recall knowledge, and this last one here is a damage dealer. I will state as I go through these how you could swap the class and possibly some of the abilities to make the character more effective. However, a few of these, fighter genuinely is probably the best option. So I'll talk about that as we come. Okay, so this first one is a tank. It is a goblin fighter with the martial disciple background. This gives a bonus on athletics and the warfare lore skill. For abilities, I pumped up the strength, have a little bit given in dexterity from the goblin, and heavily invested into charisma for the character being the party's face and for intimidation. You might notice I dumped wisdom. And really, that wisdom dumping is probably the biggest weakness of this party. It would have a very bad time with an enemy that can do mind control, but you could alleviate that by swapping up one or two of these to have wisdom. So, what did I do to make this character function as a tank? So there, it's mostly just, I gave him the heaviest armor I could, and all the shield proficiency, like reactive shield feat, and I also added some shield spikes and a flail. So the flail weapon allows him to trip, meaning that it provides some crowd control abilities to add on top of the tank, and the character also has a debuff ability in the form of Intimidations, Demoralize, and Goblin Song. Goblin Song is a feat that's essentially you annoy your enemies into having a status penalty to perception and will saves for a length of time. You can affect up to 2 targets, and you can do it repeatedly. It's basically just screaming songs like Baby Shark at your enemy, and it distracts them from the combat. So that provides a kind of funny sort of image, I guess. But this character, in general, could be thrown into any party as a tank role or a bit of a martial support role. It's kind of a hybrid because if you swap the class to, say, champion and kept the heavy armor, you would have a higher AC. However, as it is, because of the fighter thing, there's a bit more focus on the other stuff as well. Alright, so the second one. This is a fortune teller, another goblin, who has sneaky abilities and a bow. He has a short bow and a backup melee weapon, which is a frying pan. For defense, there's a kilted breastplate, which provides no penalty to athletics, acrobatics, stealth, etc. checks. And for gear, he has a bunch of random stuff like pythons and grappling arrows and, just random stuff that could help in adventure. As you can see here, he has a high reflex, moderate fortitude, and low will save. Just like this one had low will save, and moderate fortitude and reflex. So on this character, as you can see, yes, it fulfills the role. However, most likely, if I wasn't building with the limitation, I would have swapped the class to Ranger to have more flurry shooting abilities, or to Rogue to get more, essentially, options for skills. You could also swap it to a Gunslinger and get a similar set of abilities if you want to use a gun. But in general, Ranger or Rogue is better for this build because the Ranger has Flurry Ranger options or a single big target one, rather than this character essentially piecing things together. So for a new player, picking a Ranger would give a good damage, a Rogue would give a better skill-based character. The third one here is a field medic human. So in this case, the main thing I took advantage of was a mix of fighter and human abilities. This is actually a character which about 100% of the time I would choose to build as a fighter and a human because you need the additional feats from human to unlock the full strength of their options, such as having assurance on medicine, allowing them to just treat wounds without any penalty or chance of failing, and to have natural ambition so that you can get 2 feats rather than just 1. And in this case, the character has battle medicine automatically from the background, which means that they can heal within combat. Not as well as a dedicated caster, but you know. And they also have combat assessment, which lets them recall knowledge on a target whenever they succeed on a strike, though that target is then immune for 1 day. And the way you take advantage of it with this character is you have nature and religion, meaning that 2 out of 4 recall knowledge skills are covered by this character. And if you're playing in a campaign mainly fighting undead or beasts, this character could then recall knowledge on them whenever they hit a strike, which should be fairly often. Additionally, they have snag and strike, which lets them make an enemy off guard to them. And it can also then make the other fighters hit better. The reason why I focused on that here is because all fighters have an additional +2 to hit over every single other class, meaning that essentially this should be a continual just slam on an enemy, just because crits will be being landed more as long as you have some support thrown in. And I did cover the other 2 recall knowledge skills here with the Goblin Fortune Teller. Essentially, the way I did that was just giving him a bit of intelligence so that he got more skills, and thus sacrificing a bit of strength and wisdom. This character, the healer, is actually the only one with a, well, the last one's got a decent will save as well, but it's a far better will save than the 2 goblins, which both have a +2. And he, meanwhile, has about the same as the other fighters who are not focusing on a dex build. So then, with this character, I had to dump dexterity to have enough points for the wisdom to increase for recall knowledge. So he relies on heavy armor, which by level 2, hopefully, he'll be able to switch over to full plate here, which if I give it, as you can see, the AC initially doesn't adjust, but then armor shifting should, and the character will also gain Bastion type abilities from the full plate. It's called Bulwark and gives you a +3 modifier to reflex saves that replaces your dex modifier. So basically it is going to increase the saves. But at level 1 you can't get full plate, so he's stuck with splint mail. And then he's got low gold, but you probably want to get a medicine kit. I'll just find that quick. It's called a healer's kit, isn't it? Yeah, healer's toolkit, which is a bit more than he can afford, but you can party pool it between these 3 characters to let him get that healer's toolkit. And yes, I'm kind of cheesing it. You can swap up some things to get away with this, but a lot of GMs would probably be fine with a party pooling to get the healer the ability to heal. And then the last character here is a pure damage dealer with a bit of wisdom, so he has a decent perception, just like this character. Between the two of them, they both have a +8, whereas the other ones both have a +4. So that gives them a good chance of noticing threats. The way this guy works is basically he's hard to knock down, and he can deal a lot of damage, as well as having, again, the athletics actions. I really tried to go for options that gave the trip action, because all 4 of these characters have the fighter attack of opportunity. So basically, if you trip an enemy, you could trigger up to 2 attacks of opportunity at any time. So if they're all surrounding one guy and you trip, that can provoke an attack of opportunity, 2 attacks on the enemy. And you can repeat that repeatedly. So basically, when you have free fighters who can all trip with high athletics, it's kind of hard to get back up. And because I self-limited with the fighter only, I really had to drill into that option. Then this guy just has the abilities that make him not die, which is like Orc Ferocity, letting him remain at 1 hit point instead of going to 0. And Holds Guard Orc, giving him the Die Hard feat, which means that even if his wounded gets high, he can still stand back up and not just die. He has pretty much nothing to spend on gear, however, which could be a bit of a disadvantage. This is another character who I would most likely build as a fighter. However, you could also swap it to a barbarian, or probably a barbarian would be best, and you would be able to keep a lot of the same abilities. So yeah, I'll link these 4 in the description. If you are playing in a game, I do not recommend doing this first time playing. However, all 4 of these characters can give effective playstyles in a regular party as well as the specific situation at hand. Except I would alter the second one. So this is kind of a video which is supposed to show the diversity of the fighter class. However, yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope this was interesting to you. Please do not torture your GMs by just bringing this type of thing into every combat. And if you're using the Goblin, please don't sing the song the whole game.